Open Water Wednesday welcomes one of open water swimming's greatest living heroes, a quiet, determined man who understood his strengths and played to them in the oceans and lakes of the world.
Strategies came into place at that point, and literally Claudio and I would be racing stroke for stroke up the side of the river, ducking across. Once we turned on the turning pad, then the race started on the way back. And wow. This race, it took 18 and a half hours. And then coming back the next day during daylight, literally would be swimming side by side, and when one would have a feed, one would try and surge away from the other, and just trying to mentally break each other. And it was an exhausting race for that effect alone, because, here you are swimming side by side. It's a bit like hopping in the pool, swimming a 1500 with somebody. You're trying to break them, except we were trying to do this over 18 hours, and we're trying to break the person beside you, and we're still very good friends to this day, and even when we were racing, we were good friends. But anyway, this would carry on for the whole day, coming back, and then at Lake St. John is quite special because they stop you at the opening of the finish, and then we have a mile sprint. And Claudia and I would both stop, literally shake hands, have a drink, and we'd both decide, right, it's time to go now and sprint for the last 1500.
Wow.
Well, unfortunately, I think the closest I got to Claudio was a tenth of a second, and we both ended up in hospital. And the other 3 years that we raced there, there wasn't a lot of difference in it from there, but I was second 3 years in a row.
Wow.
But it was a fantastic race, and to this day, I still believe that racing set me up for being able to cope with the English Channel so well, because we pressurised ourselves so much for that longer period of time. Really, I just had another 10 hours to put on it, and we managed to knock the channel over. So I think a lot of that longer racing in the colder water was really preparing me well for the end goal.
In this incredible Open Water Wednesday interview, New Zealand's Philip Rush explains his incredible 28-hour three-way crossing of the English Channel. He describes his feelings, his strategy, his pilot, his coach, and his relentless 4-year journey to set this perhaps unbreakable record. Epic is used quite often in the marathon swimming world, but the word is certainly apropos for Philip's 63-mile swim. His coach, Tony Keenan, stayed alert, watching Philip constantly push himself for 28 hours at a 70 to 73 stroke per minute pace. Philip also explains his 18-hour mano-a-mano races in the famous Lake St. John professional marathon swims in the mid-1980s, where they swam, surged, and sprinted for over 40 miles, always to come down to the finish, where they both pushed themselves so much that hospitalization was their only answer. Fast forward 25 years and Philip has not strayed too far from the water's edge. He not only is responsible for helping guide New Zealand's best open water swimmers in their quest to make the Olympic 10K marathon swim final at the 2012 London Olympics, but also escorts and coaches intrepid marathon swimmers across the treacherous Cook Strait between the North and South Islands of New Zealand. Philip talks about sharks circling his swimmers in the middle of the Cook Strait and how he prevents the unspeakable from happening. He speaks about how the courage of athletes meets up with the beauty and mystery of the Cook Strait dolphins, who often surround and protect the human swimmers from aggressive sharks. Prepare to be enthralled by Philip's descriptions of his numerous marathon swims. Learn about his early days in the sport, how he dreamed big, and achieved those dreams with endless hours of dedicated work. A man with a huge heart, a wide smile, and a depth of courage that rivals the deep oceans where he plied his trade. Your host for this exclusive presentation is Stephen Munatones. Stephen Munatones is an International Marathon Swimming Hall of Fame inductee. He has prepared open water swimming materials used by NBC, USA Swimming, the Beijing Olympic Committee, the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, National Public Radio, and National Geographic magazine. And now, Open Water Source is pleased to present your host, Stephen Munatones, with the incomparable Philip Rush.
Hello, we're here with Philip Rush on Open Water Wednesday. Good morning, Philip, or good evening.
How's things, Steve?
Oh, good, good. Where do we find you today?
I'm in Lake Taupo, which is in the middle of the North Island of New Zealand. It's a lake which is 40.2 kilometres long, and it ranges from temperature during the summer from 15 to 20 degrees.
Remember the days when you would look at a lake like that and wonder how far it is and when you were going to swim it?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm quite fortunate. I was the first and only person to swim there and back in Lake Taupo, so it has got some very painful memories at times, but now these days a couple of cold beers on the waterfront is a lot more enjoyable.
Wow, so you went 80 kilometers in that lake.
Yeah, yes, that was after my double crossing of Cook Strait, and when we were building up to the English Channel, we were looking for some water during our summer to start and building that endurance and just getting used to the just extending that pain barrier and just getting some good quality training in.
Wow, wow. Well, so for people who do not know your illustrious career, can you take us on a path from when you were 15 years old until you retired? And explain what you've
not
done?
A problem. I was a competitive pool swimmer, like most of us have been, and then I started at our national event, which was a 3-kilometre lake event, and things grew from there. I was never a quick swimmer. I would always make the final of the national 1500 in New Zealand and scrape for the B final at the 400. So I turned to the distance swimming. Turned to the distance swimming, and then things grew from there. I was at 15. I swam the piece between the North Island and the South Island, which is Cook Strait, which is 26 k's, and I raced Mohamed Maziri, who's another well-known marathon swimmer from Egypt, and we raced across there, and I was fortunate enough to beat him on the day. And that's where it all started for me, really, Steve. And then from there, we got invited back to Egypt, and I swam in the Nile River, and we just started building swims. Went to Capri to Naples from there, and in the back of my mind, I still wasn't quick enough to mix it with the Paul Asmiths and the Claudio Plitz and some of the other top American swimmers. So from there, my coach, Tony Keenan, we started looking at longer and colder. So we managed to complete a double crossing of Cook Strait about 3 years later.
On that one, you were the first person to do that, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. 16 hours, 16 minutes, and it was the first ever double crossing of Cook Strait. And once again, that was building up to Tony and I had a plan that we wanted to do something which I was good at. Not so much the racing. Yes, I was good at some types of the racing when it got cold, and when it got further than say 7 or 8 hours, then I'd come and home. So we looked at planning through to the eventual goal, which was swimming the English Channel 3 ways. And, that took 4 summers of trying to get the weather right, trying to get everything in place. I mean, the first time we turned up in England, what happened was, the English people said, we said, well, they're to swim the English Channel 3 ways.